Today we will learn about this chapter Power Sharing of Class 10 CBSE. Power Sharing is a chapter in which we will learn about the two countries Belgium and Sri Lanka. How powers of the country were shared among the different ethnic groups, different communities you can say who were living in these two regions. Here in this chapter 2, first we will look at the cases and then we will go at the end to the conclusion what we draw from those two cases. As you can see in the map, now this is a very small country in Europe, and when we look at the world map, you will find that it shares border with France, Germany, Netherlands, and even Luxembourg. Now you can see Germany, obviously, if you can see this map, this portion of Belgium is occupied by speakers. So it's very clear that Germany is this side, okay? And this side we will find French. That's why this region is occupied by French speakers. So here from this chapter, first we will learn that in these two countries of Belgium and Sri Lanka, what were the different ethnic groups which occupied the region and how they shared their powers later on when there were conflicts, there clashes in interest. Now let's look at the first case, that is of Belgium. Now, Belgium is a small country, and they are saying here in this line that Belgium's population is half of that of this state of India, that is Haryana. You can see it's clearly written here that population of Belgium is half of whatever we have in Haryana, and there are various ethnic groups which are living there. And if you look this map, it's clearly shown here that the region of Belgium was divided into various groups on the basis of the language spoken in those regions. As you can see, this upper region signifies the Flemish region occupied by the Dutch speakers. The lower portion was occupied by the French speakers, and this region was known as the Wallonia region. And this small portion, which is marked with orange, is the capital of Belgium, that is the Brussels region. So mainly Belgium was divided into three regions. First was the Flemish region, Wallonia region, and third was the capital of the region, that was Brussels. So the country suffered in all the fields, social, cultural, and economically, and the war ended in the year 2009. It started in 1983 and it ended in 2009. And what was the result? Many people were dead. Many people died in this procedure, and many lost their source of livelihood. So it had a great impact for not sharing power equally among the various ethnic groups that lived in Sri Lanka. Now let's talk about the accommodation in Belgium. How did the people of Belgium they shared the powers among themselves. So accommodation in Belgium is mainly about the here we will learn about the Belgian model. A five you can get a lengthy question of 5 marks from here. You can see it's better if you write 5 marks, 5 points. It's good for you. So here you can see the 4 points already written for you, and fifth one we are going to mark from here, from this line to this line. So you can see here now the Belgians decided to do what? They decided to share the powers equally among the various ethnic groups which lived in the country. You can see it was occupied by the Dutch speakers, French speakers, and even few of the German speakers. Now here it's written, the first point is written here. Now they wanted to share the powers, and in that sharing process they did not want to compromise anything. So between the year 1917 1993 they amended the constitution how many times? 4 times, because they wanted to bring out the best constitution for their own country. So they were working again and again, and how many times they amended? They amended it 4 times. It's written here, so as to work out an arrangement that would enable everyone to live together within the same country in peace and harmony. So for this purpose, they did not. They spent their time. They worked about 4 times in the constitution, and they came out with a model that was accepted. That is one of the best examples of what? Power sharing. So there, whatever the points are given, you have to learn the same way. First point, the second point says, the first point is here. The second point says, Constitution said that the number of ministers, both from Dutch and French, will be equal in number. And whenever a decision will be taken, decision will be on the basis of what? Majority. For example, there are two groups. Okay, both the groups have how many members? 20 to 20 members. So for a law to be passed, we need what? Majority votes. If one group votes about in one group, if suppose 15 are voting, for yes, and in other group only five are in favor of that law, so the law will not be passed because it demands what, that the people of majority of both the groups should vote for that particular law in the country. So any law which gets the majority will be passed, will be executed in the country, and no decision will be taken what, unilaterally. That means without satisfying the various groups, without satisfying the number of people sitting as the ministers, without everyone's permission, the law will not be executed in the country. So the first point says, sorry, the second one says that the Dutch and the French speakers who will be the ministers will be equal in number, and all the decisions will be taken only after consultation and with majority vote. Let's come to the second point. Now second point says that both regions of Belgium will have their own state government, and this state government will not be working under the central government, but will be at equal status to that of central government. Okay, it's written here that the state government are not the subordinate to the central government. As you look in India, the state government our state government works under the central government, but here in Belgian model what we see that they have given equal importance to state government, because the two communities decided, the two groups decided that they will have the separate state government, and that separate government will not work under the central government, but it will be at equal status to that of central government. Now let's look at the condition in the capital city of Brussels. If you remember, Brussels had a different ratio of community groups there. There the situation was opposite. French speakers were 80% and Dutch speakers were 20%. So as in the whole country we see, when we talk about the whole country, in the whole country the Dutch speakers were in majority and French speakers were lesser number. But as the Dutch speakers have recognized the importance of French in the entire country, so when it comes to Brussels, in Brussels where majority were French in number, तो उन्होंने equal importance दी किसको, French speakers को दी. सिंपल मतलब क्या है, जब पूरी इंटायर कंट्री की बात हो रही थी और जब डच ज़्यादा थे उन्होंने इंपॉर्टेंस दी फ्रेंच को, तो उन्होंने क्या किया, फ्रेंच ने क्या किया, ब्रसल्स में जहाँ वो ज़्यादा थे उन्होंने इक्वल इंपॉर्टेंस दी टू द पीपल ऑफ द डच लैंग्वेज. सो हियर यू कैन सी दैट द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ने बोला था कि इक्वल नंबर ऑफ मेंबर्स रहेंगे ऑफ बोथ द डच एंड द फ्रेंच. ओके, नो डिसीजन विल बी टेकन यूनिलैटरली, दैट मीन्स विदाउट एनी डिस्कशन, विदाउट सेटिस्फाइंग द पीपल. सेकेंड, द स्टेट गवर्नमेंट क्या रहेगी, हर दोनों कम्युनिटी ग्रुप का डिफरेंट स्टेट गवर्नमेंट रहेगी और ये अंडर काम नहीं करेगी सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट की. इट विल बी एट इक्वल स्टेटस, इक्वल इंपॉर्टेंस मिलेगी जैसे सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट को मिलती है. एंड थर्ड पॉइंट, ब्रसल्स में जहाँ हमने देखा कि फ्रेंच ज़्यादा थे, उन्होंने क्या किया, डच को इक्वल इंपॉर्टेंस दिया, बिकॉज डच ने पूरी कंट्री की जब बात आ रही थी उन्होंने फ्रेंच को इक्वल इंपॉर्टेंस दी थी. अपार्ट फ्रॉम ऑल दिस दे ऑल्सो हैड अ कम्युनिटी गवर्नमेंट. और ये गवर्नमेंट क्यों बनाई गई थी, ताकि लोगों की लैंग्वेज को, एजुकेशन को और कल्चर को कोई भी डैमेज ना पहुँचे. सो एनी वन फॉर एग्जाम्पल अ पर्सन हैज़ एनी प्रॉब्लम रिलेटेड टू लैंग्वेज मैटर, कल्चर, उसको लग रहा है कि, तो अगर किसी को लग रहा है कि उनके राइट स्नैच हो रहे हैं ऑफ रिलेटेड टू कल्चर एंड एजुकेशन एंड इवन टू लैंग्वेज, तो दे कैन गो एंड अप्रोच दिस कम्युनिटी गवर्नमेंट. दैट वाज द थर्ड फॉर्म ऑफ गवर्नमेंट इन दी Belgian leader. So this Belgian model is considered what? It's considered a very complicated model, but yeah, people have accepted this because it led to what? Peace and harmony in the country. And this last portion is important. When many countries of Europe decided to form union, so Brussels region was taken as the headquarters of that particular union. Now let's look at the reasons why power sharing is desirable. Why मतलब हमें जाना चाहिए power sharing के लिए. The first thing, and we have taken out two reasons, एक प्रोडेंशियली और एक मॉरली, ऑन मॉरल बेसिस. प्रोडेंशियल मतलब सारी समझदारी के बाद, लॉजिक लगाने के बाद पावर शेयरिंग क्यों सही है फॉर द कंट्री, एंड मॉरल बेसिस मतलब मॉरल ग्राउंड्स पे क्यों बेहतर है दैट वी शुड गो फॉर दिस पावर शेयरिंग. प्रोडेंशियल मतलब क्या है, मतलब समझदारी. आप लॉजिकली बताओ पावर शेयरिंग क्यों सही है हमारी कंट्री के लिए. सो वी कैन सी हियर दैट फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल पावर शेयरिंग क्या रिड्यूस करेगा, द कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स जो लोगों के इश्यूज़ जो होंगे रिलेटेड टू इंटरेस्ट, वो सब चीज़ सारी क्लैशेस बिल्कुल कम हो जाएंगे सोसाइटी में, कंट्री में। एंड जो वायलेंस होते हैं बिकॉज ऑफ दीज कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स, वो भी क्या होंगे, बिल्कुल कम हो जाएंगे। सो ऑब्वियसली क्या होगा, पहले तो क्या होगा, पॉसिबिलिटी कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स ख़त्म हो जाएंगे और फिर ऑब्वियसली वायलेंस नहीं होगा। सो कंट्री विल नॉट फेस सिचुएशन लाइक सिविल वॉर दैट हैपेंड इन श्रीलंका ड्यू टू क्लैश ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है। सो वैसी सिचुएशन डेवलप नहीं होगी किसी भी कंट्री में। इससे बेटर जितने भी कम्युनिटी ग्रुप्स हैं हम सबको इक्वल इंपॉर्टेंस दें जब पावर शेयरिंग की बात है। वो कह रहे हैं इम्पोजिंग दी मेजॉरिटी कम्युनिटी, आपको जब इम्पोज करोगे मेजोरियन रूल जब आप फॉलो करोगे तो आपको थोड़ा टाइम के लिए अच्छा लगेगा, बट लॉन्ग रन में ये सारी चीज़ें क्या हैं, सिर्फ और सिर्फ एक कंट्री को बर्बाद करती हैं। बट इन लॉन्ग रन इट अंडरमाइंस द यूनिटी ऑफ द नेशन। और व्हेन यू वांट टू कीप द पीपल यूनाइटेड, तो आप ये पॉलिसी तो बिल्कुल भी नहीं अपना सकते हो कि आप लोगों को डिस्क्रिमिनेट करो। एंड द थर्ड पॉइंट इज़ व्हाट, ये चीज़ क्या होती है, जो माइनॉरिटी ग्रुप रहते हैं, जो नंबर ऑफ़ पीपल, जो नंबर में कम होते हैं, जो ग्रुप्स सोसाइटी में या कंट्री में, वो लोग क्या करते हैं, वो एक्चुअली सफ़र करते हैं एंड उन्हें ये सब पसंद नहीं आता है। सो वी शुड गो फॉर वॉट, वी शुड गो फॉर पावर शेयरिंग एज फॉर। सो दीज आर द 3 पॉइंट्स इंपॉर्टेंट हियर। पावर शेयरिंग प्रूडेंशियल रीजंस क्या है, पहले कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स अवॉइड होंगे या वायलेंस अवॉइड होगा। सेकंड क्या है, वो कह रहे हैं आपको मेजॉरिटी रूल थोड़े अच्छे टाइम के लिए अच्छा लगेगा, बट लॉन्ग रन में क्या है, लोग आप यूनाइटेड नहीं रख सकते हो लोगों को। एंड थर्ड पॉइंट दे आर सेइंग ये ऑप्रेसिव है, ऑब्वियसली ये अच्छा नहीं है फॉर द माइनॉरिटी ग्रुप। ना लेट्स लुक एट द रीजंस ऑन मॉरल ग्राउंड्स। वो कह रहे हैं पावर शेयरिंग, अगर आपको एक डेमोक्रेटिक फीलिंग लानी है सोसाइटी में कि हर इंसान फ्री है, फ्री इक्वल राइट्स हैं, रीजनस राइट हैं, तो आपको ये क्या करना पड़ेगा, आपको पावर शेयरिंग करना पड़ेगा, ताकि हर इंडिविजुअल को, चाहे वो माइनॉरिटी ग्रुप को बिलोंग करता है या मेजॉरिटी ग्रुप को बिलोंग करता है, सबको इक्वल इंपॉर्टेंस मिले। A democratic rule involves what power sharing with those affected by its exercise who have to live with its effect. And वो क्या कह रहे हैं, एंड हमें पता है पीपल हैव द राइट टू बी कंसल्टेड ऑन हाउ दे आर टू बी गवर्नड। हमें पता है यहाँ पब्लिक है, पब्लिक ऑलवेज अलर्ट रहती है, पब्लिक के हिसाब से चीज़ें चलती हैं डेमोक्रेसी में। एंड डेमोक्रेसी क्या करती है, लोगों को साथ लेके चलती है, फॉर्म जो गवर्नमेंट रहता है वो लोगों को साथ लेके चलता है। सो इट्स बेटर वी शुड गो फॉर पावर शेयरिंग देन avoiding and following this one rule of majority in the country. Now let's look at this case of Khalil's dilemma. There are two people on the motorbike and one is talking to other one so that he doesn't fall asleep. वो सो ना जाए, तो जिसको एक कहानी बता रहा है, कहानी नहीं, एक रियल सिचुएशन बता रहा है। वो कह रहा है कि एक कंट्री है लेबनान, which is again in Europe. The Flemish region was occupied 59% by Dutch speakers. Walloonian region was entirely occupied by 40% of French, and the Brussels region, that was the capital of the country, here the situation was entirely different. Here 80% were the French speakers and 20% were the Dutch speaker. So here we can see that in the entire country, when we talk about the entire country, the maximum speakers were of Dutch language and the less were of French language. But when we look at the Brussels region, that is the capital of the country, here the situation was little opposite. Here the 80%, the majority speakers were French language, and less, that is only 20% were Dutch speakers. So from this portion you mainly need to learn what were the various ethnic groups which occupied the region of Belgium. Again I am repeating, the region was divided into 3 parts: Flemish, Wallonia, and the Brussels, that was the capital of the country. Okay, also you can see 1% of the region was occupied by the German speakers. As I told you, German country is here, Germany is here, so obviously this influence of it will be seen in the some parts of Belgium. So this is the ethnic group, and questions from here I have seen in certain board exam question papers, so just see that you prepare this portion very well. Now in Sri Lanka, you can see the maximum speakers, the maximum region of the country was occupied by the Sinhala speakers. They were actually 78 in number, and the other portion, that was the northern and the eastern portion of Sri Lanka, was occupied by the Tamil speakers. As you can see, it's clearly mentioned here. Please learn the ethnic groups of both the countries, that is Belgium and Sri Lanka. So in Sri Lanka, the maximum portion, as here, the maximum portion was occupied by Dutch and less of French, and the Brussels more of French and less of Dutch. Here the condition was similar. Here you can see the maximum portion was occupied by the Sinhala speakers, and the northern and the eastern portion were occupied by the Tamil speakers. Now, in this Tamil speakers, you will find there two category. One was called the Sri Lankan Tamils, another one was called the Indian Tamils. Now, these Indian Tamils had come from long time back. They were brought from India during the colonial rule by the Britishers to carry out this agricultural activity in Sri Lanka. So they settled there and they comprised how much portion? 5%. As you can see here, the total portion of Tamil speakers is given 18. And we know Tamil speakers are of two types: Sri Lankan Tamils, which is given here 13%. So understood here, the Indian Tamils will be how many? 5%. Also, here in my notes, you can see I've written here Sri Lanka. The population of the country is similar to that of Haryana, of our country. Okay, Sinhala, the speakers were maximum 74%, 18% of Tamil, and they were subdivided into two parts: 13% of Sri Lankan and 5% of Indian Tamils, whose forefather came from India to do plantation workers during the colonial rule. Because remember, Britishers do occupy Sri Lanka during the past years. So to carry out the activities here, they brought some people from the. If you look at the southern tip of India, the southernmost state of India is Tamil Nadu. So easily people were brought to from Tamil Nadu to Sri Lanka for these activities. Now let's talk about the religion of these people. Sinhalas were mainly following what? Buddhism, and Tamils were a mixture of what? Hindus and Muslims. You can see Sinhala speakers followed Buddhism, and Tamils were actually what? They were both Hindus and Muslims. So you can see variety of people, diverse groups were occupying this region of Sri Lanka. Also, there were some 7% of people who were Christian, and they were both Tamils and Sinhalas. Now let's understand how the powers of the various of the now let's see how they resolve the differences, how the various ethnic groups will occupy and will share the powers in the country. In Belgium, it's written there, it was mainly occupied by the Dutch. They could have easily followed what? Majoritarian policy. But let's understand as we move further, we will see what kind of things were done in both the region. Now this part is not that important, just let's come down and see what happened in Sri Lanka. Now here we have discussed the ethnic groups living there, and here we will find out what solution did they take out in their own region. Now Sri Lanka gained independence in the year 1948, and after that, here you will see that as soon as it gains independence, Sri Lanka now it want does. So now we will see how they follow this majoritarian policy to establish their supremacy in the country. Now obviously their Sinhala speakers were more in the number. So they wanted to gain what? Dominance over the government. So here if you can see, this paragraph is very important. Actually the story starts from here. This is also very important. Now in order to in order to gain supremacy, they followed a policy of what? Majoritarian. Now through this policy they will follow the rule of majority in the country. Here, this paragraph is very important, as well as this paragraph. Three steps are written here. What steps they have taken to develop supremacy? The first step is what? 1956, an act was passed which declared Sinhala as the official language of the country. Secondly, the government also followed what? Preferential policy, where it favored only the Sinhala applicants. You can see here. Also, a new constitution ordered stipulated, that means what? To say exactly and officially about what must be done to protest and foster only Buddhism. So these are the three steps taken to develop supremacy or to gain dominance in the country. First of all, in 1956, they declared Sinhala as the official language. Secondly, government followed and favored only the Sinhala applicants, the people who were applying for the various posts, for jobs and for university position. So only Sinhala people, as if you see in for example in our country, if we are favoring only one group of people, so we will be offering only them those opportunities. So here in Sri Lanka, thirdly, the state focused only on propagating this religion of Buddhism that was followed by the Sinhala speakers that were about 74% in this region of Sri Lanka. Now let's see what happens next. Now after all these measures, what happened? Tamils felt like aliens in the country. They had the feeling of what alienation. So this part is important. This part is also important. So what led to the development of this a feeling of alienation among the Tamils? So here you can see they felt there were four points are given here. First of all, they felt that no political party was focusing on their language and culture. As you can see, only a new order was passed that the state will foster and protect only one religion, that is Buddhism. So now they were afraid that no political party was focusing on their language and culture. Also, they also wanted that some order should be passed for their language and protection of their language and culture. But no such thing was done in Sri Lanka. They also felt that the government was denying them what equal rights, okay, you can see, denied them what equal political rights, discriminated them on the basis of this number, and denied them from giving jobs and other opportunities. Also ignored the interest. They did not look after, they did not give a thought to the interest and to the likings of the other communities which lived in Sri Lanka. So this portion is very important. From here, what steps were taken to develop supremacy in Sri Lanka? How you can say that the feeling of alienation developed in Tamils? Okay, these are the 3 points. You can see how I have marked here, or you can see from the notes which I have made. Feeling of alienation among the Sri Lankans developed. Okay, Tamils developed. They felt that no measure was taken to protect their language and culture. They also felt that government did not give them equal rights, denied them what followed discrimination policy, and ignored the interest. So let's see what will be the reaction, what the Tamils will do in return after seeing all this, whatever was happening in Sri Lanka. Let's see how did they retaliate. The next page is equally important because from here we talk about the various measures taken by Sri Lankan Tamils. The first point is what? They started doing what? They started making parties and also started holding what? Protests and struggles, because they want that Tamil too should be recognized as an official language of Sri Lanka. They demanded 2-3 more things. What was there? First demand was the what? To declare Tamil as the official language, to give them regional autonomy. They wanted that their portion should have a separate form of government, and this should not be interconnected with the Sinhala government. So they wanted that they should be given separate rights from the Sinhalas. Also, they wanted what? Equality. Okay, equality, as we can say, they were not given political rights, so they demanded what? Equality in jobs and education. And also after 1980s, people started demanding that they want a separate Tamil state for themselves. The northern and the eastern part of Sri Lanka, this portion, northern and the eastern part, they wanted that it should be declared as a separate state of what? Sri Lanka, and called to be known as what? Tamil Elam. And as you can look here, Elam, the word is very important. Elam is the native Tamil name for Sri Lanka. Also, you can see these are the reactions, how these Sri Lankan Tamils reacted to the policy of majoritarian policy that was followed by the Sri Lankans or Sinhalas. Okay, you can see the first point is what? They launched parties and struggles. Second, they demanded was regional autonomy, equality of opportunity in education and jobs. And by the year 1980s, they did what? They demanded that they want what? A separate state for northern and eastern part that will be called as what? Tamil Elam. As a result, the distrust between the two communities, it grew further, and there were widespread conflicts. People were not ready to get along with each other. So obviously it soon turned into the conditions of civil war developed in the nation. Civil war is something, a kind of war that is fought inside the boundaries of the nation among the various community groups that exist in that region. So now people were involved in the civil war, and as a result of the civil war, civil war will lead to some of the negative effects, and let's look at the negative effects of the civil war. Thousands of people were killed. Many families were forced to leave the country as refugees, and they have to leave the source of livelihood. What happened? They lost their source of livelihood. For example, if I am living in Sri Lanka, the portion where I was living, I had an agriculture farm and because of the civil war, everything got destructed, everything got spoiled. So my source of livelihood now, everything has ended. So what happened? Many people lost their source of livelihood and they have to move out of the countries as refugees. Also, the civil war led to